Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tepa Republic. On the last episode we saw a Matsue fleet attack our fleet near Kawachi. It was able to do some damage to us, but still was destroyed in the usual fashion when the Sioux pulled the cross in the T tactic and wiped them out. Then the fleet was immediately attacked by a Hiroshima fleet, a more powerful one, and this time they actually used a tactic that allowed them to counter our usual line defense maneuver. They came to go around our line and bombard us at long range. The Sioux lost many ships and so did the Hiroshima, both sides taking extreme losses, but in the end the Sioux were able to just about pull out a victory. Meanwhile on land, Takehisa and Kunimitsu are gradually pushing towards Inaba, wiping out the heavy Yonago presence to try and capture that very valuable province. Back at sea, the remains of the Sioux fleet was attacked yet again by a small group that was able to wipe out the last of our corvettes, meaning we're down to just a single ship, our Ironclad, led by Captain Compton. The Ironclad was able to successfully defeat all of the remaining attackers though, holding out on its own for a long time, although taking heavy damage. And then, just to make matters worse, the Yonezawa pushed in yet another fleet, very small but still more powerful than all we have left. So our Ironclad now sails out to fight this Yonezawa navy on its own, and we're going to see if it can pull it off. There is little I can really say openly, but rest assured that our lords have provided us with the best weapons money can buy. The uniform is better quality than any of the clothes we've ever owned. Everyone seems hopeful that we can rescue the Emperor soon, especially as the Sioux have to move more and more of their men to the front lines. I know you don't approve of this, or of my decision, but I want to free the Emperor as much as anyone. I believe the Meiji Liberation Decree was real, that the word of the Emperor giving our lords the right to draft anyone was true. It may be an extreme measure, but for the sake of our future we must endure this disrespect. Besides, if I were to ignore the call to arms, I would be subject to much worse punishments than a mere war can mete out. Such is our Emperor's wish. I don't know when we'll be leaving, but I feel we've reached the end of our training. We can fight as good as a grown man, especially when it comes to shooting. We grew up with these rifles, most people could ace the firing range from the very beginning. I have a great many friends already, and I know that whatever happens, I'll be getting once-in-a-lifetime chance to make a difference, and to make you proud. I shall try to write more while we're campaigning, if I can. Don't worry if you don't hear from me, I'll tell you all about it upon my return. So we're back with our lone Ironclad on the seas near Kawachi. It's currently fighting 3 Yonago ships. They've definitely got our guys outgunned, but we have them out-armoured. Plus, the enemy have come close enough to our Ironclad that we can hit them with explosive shot. And the central of the 3 ships catches fire, and as you can see, they turn off from the line of engagement to go and repair themselves at a greater distance. I'm still bombarding them as they go, but I'm going to switch targets to one of the active ships, maybe try and make them do the same thing as well. All the while they're going to be firing back at me with standard shot. That standard shot of course can't really breach my armour, but that armour has been so damaged that it's reaching the point when it actually might be able to, just because I've taken so much fire. So I need to try and get these guys to surrender, hopefully start fires on their ships before they manage to do that. Now they did the classic AI tactic of circling around with firing, but circling so much that they've ended up getting stuck on the red line of death, or at least they're about to. You can see 2 ships coming in to pull in next to each other on the line, which is a situation I was really hoping would happen, so I was glad to see this happening, because as you can see, the ships are now blasting each other. The ship at the back fire standard shots across the deck of the one in front of it to try and hit me, and kills the crew members, which severely demoralizes them. Plus they're even blasting into the hull of their ship at super close range, which is going to be doing heavy damage. Plus this ship is taking explosive shot from my Ironclad, so this corvette is not in a very good situation. They're trying to repair, but they're also stuck on the red line of death, and it seems they're just generally glitching out, taking heavy fire from both sides. And they decide to rout in that situation. So ideal, we've managed to get the enemy to defeat one of their own ships. That's their most powerful ship as well, being knocked out of the fight and leaving the map. The other ship seems to be turning away in shame, showing me its rear, but I don't have time to fire at it because it's the ship that turned off earlier has come back from repairing itself and is now engaging me at relatively close range. And you can see the ironclad is not looking in ideal condition. It's full of holes. The gunnery turrets have been almost completely destroyed. They're being hit by heavy fire. Both sides of the hull are at about half strength, the sort of strength where it's possible to pierce them and cause the ship to sink. So we are in a little bit of danger. I'm going to turn my fire to hit the nearer ship with explosive shot, because if I can get this guy to set on fire yet again, we might just be able to get them off the battlefield since they've already sustained a fair bit of damage. So my guys are going to fire. I'm using the quick reload ability to try and get as much fire on them as possible, even with most of my guns destroyed at this point. So that ship was gunning for the red line of death, but actually it surrendered before it reached there because I was able to set a fire on them, which is excellent news, leaving just the final ship. I got a fire started on their ship, it goes out, then I start another one. They seem to be trying to escape from me, perhaps going to try and repair themselves. But as they go, they're taking more and more shots, and even though you can see their morale is actually at full at the moment, as is their hull strength, they suddenly surrender out of the blue and decide to just abandon their ship as the fire appears to spread across the entire deck. Perhaps a good move from them. It does mean this is a decisive victory for the Sioux Navy, or what is left of it anyway. Compton has held on yet again, and since the Yonezawa are pretty much the last clan to take their turn in the end turn sequence, it seems he will have finally survived this series of challenges. Let's have a quick look at the battle results. You can see I did have that ship right at the beginning that I fled from the battle, which is still alive, and then we have Compton's ship, with most of its health gone, most of its guns are knocked out as well, but it is still floating. So I'm going to send all of these ships back into port. Compton's was already there, of course, and now start repairing them, which will be a very costly procedure. Obviously, I need to get some ships to replace them. I was going to just build them at Compton's location, but I realised I can build the copper-plated variant background in Issei. The only trouble will be whether I can get them over to Compton's location or get Compton back to come and join up with this fleet, but I decided to worry about that later. I'm just going to start building those superior ships there. Now in Setsu, we've got two enemy armies to worry about. First, the Iwakuni have a full stack that's marching eastward. We don't know where they're trying to go, but we can make sure that they don't get there. I've got these two stacks which can easily attack the army. It runs away, unfortunately, so we lost the chance to quickly wipe it out. The army itself doesn't look particularly powerful. It's pretty standard. Loads of generals though, and loads of not particularly powerful artillery. So I think either of my stacks would have a good chance against it. So I don't need both of them to campaign in that direction. So I'm going to use the other one to come back and attack the Matsue army. I have no idea where the Matsue are going. They are possibly going for the capital. They have no chance of taking it. Either way, we're going to fight them and try and get rid of them now. You can see their army is pretty much melee focused, a traditional army that's surprisingly powerful according to the balance bar, especially because our army is leveled up and elite. So we'll see if we can prove that bar wrong and take them out with ease.
Guess I went too easy on him. Should have known that eventually one of our enemies would have a man like myself at the helm. A guy who would see that our formations ain't exactly state of the art. This ain't no one's fault but mine. I get the feeling that if I was under any other banner, some Japanese lord would be calling for my head. But Takayuki just sends his condolences and talks about when more ships can be ready. He's either heartless, oblivious, or he truly understands how to fight a war. Might even be all three. Still, goes to show that Sioux is something different, something special, something worth losing so many brave souls for. Or, damn it, I hope it is.
So here they come, lots of traditional units among this army, as I said, archers, Buddhist zealots, they even have some particularly high level samurai. Overall, this army is going to rely on closing to melee range. It also has these Bakumatsu Lancers, one of the most powerful charging cavalry in the game. If they manage to attack my line, they will go right through an entire regiment. So I have to try and stop them doing that at all costs. I'm just setting up a basic formation on this hill because the enemy seems to be advancing towards me, so I will take the defender's advantage. Two lines of men, sharpshooter at the back, main infantry at the front, and I'm currently arranging the limited number of melee troops I have to receive enemy charges should they come my way. I don't have any artillery, so the enemy isn't going to be pounded as they advance towards us, so they just advance at a walking pace, but slowly they are going to come into range of my sharpshooters. They manage to get off a few shots and start sniping down these Buddhist zealots, particularly useful. I need to take out these high-level melee infantry at a distance, because I don't want to have to try and engage them even with my own melee infantry because it's so much inferior. Now luckily for me, their Bakumatsu Lancers, probably their best unit, decides to charge across the face of my line and in front of the rest of their army, meaning they're going to take all of the fire from the first 1 or 2 volleys of my main line. As a result, this regiment takes extreme casualties. You can see what they were going for. They want to attack my stormtroopers, who I've put in a weird position off on the right flank to fire at men coming over this hill. But as a result of them being there, the enemy decides to use the weird tactic of first charging towards my line, then turning and charging across the line to go towards those stormtroopers. I don't know why they're being singled out, but this is going very well for me because these Buddhist zealots are wasting time and being cut down right out in front of the line, and overall being completely wasted. You can see the enemy have also a unit of Samurai Hero. This is a unit that inspires the rest of their army and fires particularly accurate and rapid bow fire from their horses. So those archers are managing to inflict some casualties in my line. I believe the arrows wipe out about a quarter of the regiment they were firing at over the course of just a couple of minutes. They also have regular archers, so you can see are trying to demoralize my left flank with fire arrows, but it's not really doing anything. They're spreading out way too far. They're not able to inflict particularly heavy casualties on my men, and all the while my guys are going to be firing back and inflicting much heavier casualties on their regiment. So this ranged battle is definitely going to go to my advantage, and the melee portion of the fight is over. It never really happened, in fact, because the enemy have wasted all of their men charging up and down in front of my line. So at this point I'm just going to wipe out their remaining range units by overpowering them with my superior firepower at range, and as the enemy get cut down they start to retreat. Of course, as is the tradition for enemy generals, they suddenly rush in their commander to attack me at the last second. Their commander rushed my stormtroopers. The stormtroopers hit them with a volley from their shotguns, which wiped out his entire regiment almost instantly, and the general himself was also killed by sharpshooter fire as he tried to escape. So overall, that Matsui army did not perform very well. The balance bar had that fight to be almost even. They did inflict some moderate casualties on a couple of our regiments using their bow fire, but overall they did no serious damage to me, and I didn't even have to do anything in the fight to actually win it. So let's have a quick look at the results. You can see we lost maybe 200 men, the enemy losing everything they had. One regiment in particular took moderate losses, about a quarter of the men lost, but overall nothing to worry about at all. The threat that the Matsui may have been posing by sneaking into our territory there has been annihilated. So the surviving army does need to replenish a bit, so I may send them back to Setsu. The other army that was chasing the Iwakuni could either attack them now or I can wait. I was wondering whether the Iwakuni would be able to attack Hanama in the next turn. I thought it probably can't because the forest in the way will severely reduce the movement points of that army. So I decided I probably have the leisure to simply wait. I can just put my army near them, see what the Iwakuni do. Perhaps they'll attack me and give me the defender's advantage. If they don't, I will just wait for me to be able to team up with more forces. Perhaps the guys in Hanama or even the stack that just fought at Setsu can come over and help out and make sure that we can completely defeat that army. I don't need to risk any sort of engagement where I might actually take some losses, especially with armies that don't have generals leading them. Now Takayuki on the border of Western Harima is pretty much ready to advance. There's an enemy army sitting in the way though. I am going to attack it, but unfortunately it falls back into the castle, so I thought I might as well just go and besiege this castle at Bizen. The balance bar doesn't look good. You can see the enemy actually have a very good traditional army. They have loads of these guys who are a ranked up version of Naginata Samurai essentially, who are themselves at high rank and with armor upgrades, plus they have naval artillery support in that battle. So overall the enemy is in a pretty good situation, especially for a siege defense, because there will be a lot of melee combat and their melee component is very strong. So I'm not going to attack, I'm just going to sit there, see if they'll attack me and get out of that siege battle situation. I can probably defeat them in a field battle. Meanwhile, in Inaba, the joint armies of Takahisa and Kunimitsu are going to continue their push towards the town itself. First, there was a Yonago stack on this crossroads, and I decided I wanted to take it out so it can't interfere. I'm just going to overpower it by attacking it with both of my stacks. The enemy stack isn't particularly powerful itself, so when attacked by two of my own, it doesn't stand much chance, especially because my guys are mostly very leveled up. So I decided I'd just auto-resolve this enemy stack off the field, since there's almost no chance of losing against it in this situation, especially because we have a giant artillery advantage and could just pound them into submission. So it's a decisive victory, actually not completely negligible losses there, but nothing too much to worry about. The only problem is, since I'm not regenerating troops, having constant battles one after the other is slowly making these armies less and less powerful, and I am going to need enough strength to actually take the castle, which, as you can see, has a full garrison plus a reinforcement army, so I do need to be careful. To that end, I decided to send my shinobi to see if the Yonago had any reinforcements on the way. They do have a small number of men locally just over to the west in Hoki, but actually it's the Matsue bringing in almost a whole stack that could complicate matters as I make my advance on Inaba Castle. I understand the concern, of course. It would be almost impossible to take Inaba before first snow. But there are truths about war you can learn from understanding your men. One truth is that in a situation where they must win, they will win. To carry out a campaign in winter is to double the strength and resolve of your men, for only through victory will they find the season to be hospitable. Simply tell your troops that all the food they could want is within the castle walls, and they shall tear the enemy apart to get to it. I shall be employing the same tactic with my own men. I believe this experiment will pay off nicely. My next move is to have Yoshiuji attack Hitachi province. Previously this province had been unoccupied, which was why I was sending Yoshiuji towards it, but actually during the end turn sequence the Edo garrisoned half a stack there, meaning that when I attack there's a full stack of enemy troops inside defending against me, and the balance bar is in the enemy's favour. I decided to siege them out. I probably could actually win in a siege assault, especially because I have this naval support fire available. I could probably severely damage the enemy's castle and forces inside before making my attack. But I suspected the Edo had nothing coming to reinforce that position, so there was nothing wrong with sieging them out and trying to tempt them into a land battle. I'm using my shinobi to just confirm that, and as I move north into Fukushima province, we can see there are no enemy forces coming for a very large distance, so it seems this area is pretty secure, apart from these two Edo groups which have decided to rally their forces right next to where Tananao is standing on the road. A poor decision, and as a result I'm going to get Tananao to attack them. Both of the groups retreated understandably, but I decided I'm going to chase them down and destroy them because I don't want these guys causing any trouble once I start moving east with Tananao's forces. They have a surprising advantage on the balance bar. I thought it would be more in my favour, but I thought the balance bar was probably lying actually, as it sometimes does, and indeed we completely wiped them out in an auto-resolve. Both forces are destroyed. This leaves Tananao free to move east. The plan for Tananao is to move onto the road between Kosuke and Shimotsuke. Shimotsuke itself being unoccupied at the moment, so if I can get there, which will take a couple of turns before the enemy reinforce it, I'll take it easily. And it looks like the enemy aren't going to reinforce, so that should be a province in the bag later on. Now in Echigo, we saw that the Sendai dodged the invasion of Echigo itself and seemed to be sending their forces further west. Quite inconvenient. We also have the Sado forces who appeared to be advancing on North Shinano. There are still some forces hanging around in North Shinano as a result of the previous long-term war that happened there, and I'm going to further bolster them with some forces from South Shinano who don't really need to be there now that things have calmed down after the revolution. I'm just going to send one squad of high-level levy infantry who won't actually reach the province in time, but hopefully in the future they'll be useful there anyway. Now in Echigo there's a big army inside the castle, plus there's Takemichi's army outside. I wanted to leave an army inside the castle because the second Sendai force plus the Yonezawa force behind it might happen to attack Echigo rather than bypass it like the first army. This is unlikely knowing how the AI tends to work, but I decided to leave that gamble and just attack with Takemichi's army for now. I probably could have at least brought some forces from Echigo to help him out, but I was fairly confident we'd be able to win here, though unfortunately I don't have any artillery. Luckily the enemy doesn't either, but it does mean this is going to be a pretty standard field battle where the enemy can actually use their defender's advantage. You can see the enemy have a balanced army that's probably stronger in melee, whereas mine is probably stronger at range, so hopefully I'll be able to exploit that advantage on the battlefield. It really depends what sort of formation the enemy are going to decide to take up, since they don't have to do anything to dodge any artillery this time, which we haven't seen in a while. Now what the enemy did was quite inconvenient actually. They positioned themselves on a very good position they had in their deployment zone, a huge hill completely forested, so they can defend a very powerful position with multiple lines of line infantry and melee infantry in front, plus they're all completely hidden from me. So I'm not going to be able to use my sharpshooters to pick them off at distance or anything like that. You can see I initially deployed in a nice formation for myself on this little hill, thinking the enemy might attack me, but unfortunately that is not the case. So we're going to have to now attack that hill, and I was wishing I had brought more forces from Echigo to make this easier, because it's not going to be easy to take a hill with an army that is about equal to the force occupying it. The enemy for some reason decided to launch a cavalry assault on my army as I was maneuvering, just rushing away from their position to attack me. Absolutely no idea what their motivation for this was, because it can't possibly help them at this stage. I caught them with my own cavalry and then brought in another unit of my own cavalry to seal the deal, hoping to just wipe this unit out before the fighting gets started. They have several units of cavalry in their force, so I was glad to see them throw one of them away. I'm not going to get any surprises from these guys later on. Now this battle, by the way, is going to be somewhat corrupted in the replay, so as we go along I'll explain how it goes differently to how I saw it when I actually fought it. This so far though is exactly the same. The enemy just attacked me for no reason, we wiped them out, and then the survivors on both sides withdrew, with my side dealing many more casualties than the enemy did. So all good stuff. So I'm now going to be moving my army around to the west side of the enemy's hill, where there's a nice flat plain from which to begin my attack on their position. It's been a long time since these men faced an enemy that hasn't been rattled and gutted by artillery fire. With artillery aside, it is hard to say which army is greater. The terrain certainly favours them, but our soldiers are veteran, driven. If I can just get them to come down from that hill, we can beat them with brute force. I was too complacent when I ordered the Echigo brigades to remain on guard at home. With another 2,000 men would see the enemy surrounded completely. But we rebellious heroes should not admit to failure. There will be a way to force the enemy to make a mistake if we keep our cool. So I'm beginning my advance on their hill, and as I was doing so, the enemy started falling back. Initially they had deployed on the side of the hill facing me, but they started rushing back. It seemed like they were setting up on the far side of the hill. Now that's pretty inconvenient, because in this battle I have the ranged advantage. If I can get a line battle going, it'll probably go my way, but because the enemy is going over the crest of the hill, I'll have to close to point blank range before I can even see them, meaning my plan to just snipe them with these sharpshooters here that I've put at the front possibly isn't going to work. So an inconvenient move from the enemy. As I moved up, they actually did return to my side of the hill, so I was hopeful, but then they started rushing back again as I actually came into range. My sharpshooters were able to shoot a couple of them. You can see a couple of bodies there, but overall the enemy decided they weren't going to sit there and allow my plan to work, so that's inconvenient. This means I'm going to have to simply advance towards the hill and then actually start going up it to see if that will tempt the enemy to come back onto my side and possibly snipe them then, and if not, go over the top of the hill and engage them at complete point blank range. Now, trying to get the enemy to move, I sent some cavalry to go and annoy their units at the back of their army. Now, curiously, a unit of Yari Ki rushes out to start chasing my cav, and this is one of the main differences between this battle replay and the real battle. In the real battle, it was actually a squad of Spear Levy that came to chase my men. I was trying to draw them back to my line, so you can see my cavalry returning back to my side of the battlefield, but because it's actually Yari Ki chasing them in this version, they were able to catch up easily, because of course with Spear Levy chasing them I would have had much more time. Plus, in fact, in the real battle the Spear Levy only got about halfway and then went back to their line. So now, my unit of cavalry has been attacked in the rear by an enemy charge, has lost a bunch of men. You can see I'm still giving them movement orders to return to my formation, but they're unable to complete them because they're completely bogged down by the enemy's attack. So this isn't going too well. The replay is already going the enemy's way. My regiment was completely wiped out, just a couple of guys routing off the field. The remaining enemy cavalry started to go for the rear of my advanced troops. Luckily, my sharpshooters at the back were able to cut down a whole load of them as they came in. Just a few survivors reached my line and managed to kill some of my guys by attacking them in the rear. The rest of the guys completely unfazed, just continuing on with their usual orders, moving towards the base of the hill, ready to climb up. Luckily, the remaining enemy cavalry were cut down in a friendly fire-tastic blast from the sharpshooters. So my main line, you can see now, has got to the base of the hill and is considering going up. The enemy have brought a few men forward to skirmish with me, which is exactly what I wanted to happen, because these guys are coming out of hiding by firing inaccurately at my line infantry, who are also firing back but won't be able to hit anything. and because they're out of hiding, my sharpshooters are going to be able to gradually reduce their numbers. The sharpshooters still aren't going to be able to inflict many casualties because of the trees, which are going to block many of the shots, plus we're firing at our extreme range, so it's going to be really just odd kills we're getting here and there. But I'm willing to let this go on for a long period of time to gradually whittle the enemy down. The enemy, as you can see, were rearranging their formation quite a bit, which revealed the location of many of their units. Most of them are just on the crest rather than just over, and some more of them came down to take part in this skirmishing, which is ideal. These matchlock Kachi aren't really going to be able to hit me because the trees are blocking their own shots and they're very inaccurate, so it's very good for me to just let them keep firing to reveal their position. They also started rushing these units about who are just taking collateral damage from the shots that miss the guys that my men are firing at. They're going to hit these men who are just walking about up and down the hill. So they're actually losing a fair number of their melee troops as well. You can see some of their Ronin here are charging down. It looks like they're willing to take the lead in this fight. They're going to come down the hill and attack me. This didn't happen in the replay, by the way. You'll see a theme with this replay is that many enemy units charged to attack me in this opening part of the battle, which didn't happen at all in the real fight. In the real fight, I'm basically doing phased advances, trying to slowly move my line further and further up the hill to increase the number of enemies I reveal and increase the amount of men I'm killing by firing my light infantry, who aren't really going to get any kills at all, trying to fire right up the hill. Here's another interesting replay corruption. A unit of Sabre Cavalry has appeared and is now attacking my line infantry. These Sabre Cavalry were actually waiting at the back of the enemy's formation for the entire battle in my version of it, but here they've charged forwards in the vanguard to attack my line as it comes up the hill. And a Sabre Cavalry charge against these line infantry is very effective. They've done extreme damage. We're also being attacked by the Spear Levy, who are doing okay fighting with my guys in melee. They're not going to do all that well because these high level line infantry are actually quite good in melee, and my sharpshooters behind, of course, are going to try and snipe through the gap to take out some of the enemies. You can see here as evidence that this wasn't happening in my version of the battle that my melee units are just standing right at the back, not doing anything, not reacting at all to this attack on my front line, because of course it didn't really happen. Now the Sabre Cavalry have just about been defeated. We managed to kill them all, although with extreme losses in the regiment that was fighting them. And the problem is that the regiments fighting the enemy have decided to partially chase the enemy's routing units and have now put themselves up the hill and are going to be vulnerable to enemy fire now that they're closer and that most of their men are gone. Luckily, they're also able to fire back and inflict a few casualties on the enemy, so that might slightly even things out. But overall, it's a dodgy situation, luckily resolved because I happened to give my whole line a movement order right then, which causes them to go back to their true position, although now the center of my line is much, much thinner than it should be. Now another charging enemy unit appears. This time it's some Yarikachi, who appear to be following my men as they fall back from their advanced position. These guys seem to have very bad morale, so they actually start rushing back to their line after taking some sharpshooter fire, plus they're taking a bit of close range fire from these carbine infantry and line infantry, who are already a little bit depleted from fighting so far and are taking fire from the enemies, so their numbers are dropping quite rapidly. We managed to kill a good number of this Yarikachi as they leave. The enemy actually do have loads of firepower, but you can see their formation isn't using it very well. They've got half their guys blocking their own line of sight, so only a very small number of their troops are actually firing back, which is great for me because of the collateral damage, as I mentioned earlier. The few guys that I can see and can fire at, the shots that miss them will be killing the guys just standing around being wasted behind them. More Yarikachi and Ronin are now charging towards my lines, another event that didn't quite happen in the replay. Another unit of Sabre Cav comes out of nowhere and completely destroys this unit of carbine infantry. These carbine infantry will not be able to stand up at all to the Sabre Cavalry charge. They're going to be completely wiped out now, especially once my sharpshooters start inflicting friendly fire. You can see my whole army is falling back because in this part of the battle, the enemy actually did charge a couple of infantry units down the hill, just starting to come down, but not getting close. Overall, this battle is so far going quite differently to how I remembered it. We'll see if it gets back on track and whether I actually manage to win it in this replay next time. So that's all for now. We'll be seeing the rest of that replay and my attempt to consolidate a powerful position ready for the winter next time on Teppo Republic.